What's going on? We are here in downtown Detroit, and this is a beautiful, beautiful view. We have the beautiful Detroit skyline. This is the AskASwimPro show. You have questions, we have answers. We're on Instagram. What's going on, guys? And we're on Facebook. What's going on? I see a lot of people waving, but I can't reach and tap on the waving. Sorry, we're gonna have to leave you guys hanging. But if you do have any questions, we can tune in and read your questions. So go ahead and first of all, tell us where you guys are coming from. And Paige, maybe you could read them because I can't.
We have a question from Olivia Cummins, 16.
Olivia!
What's up? How do you make a 50 free faster?
Ooh, 50 freestyle. All right, let's get rolling into the questions. So 50 freestyle is all about start, turn, finish. And if it's a long course, you don't even have the turn. So it's literally start, finish. So there's a few things you want to work on. Obviously, you want to be consistent in your training when it comes to your streamlines off the wall, your technique, your breath control. But honestly, if you want to get faster at the 50 freestyle, you need to train your body to swim faster. So every time you're doing a race pace set in practice, you have to be pushing yourself to the max to make sure you're really training your body how to swim fast. Otherwise, it's not going to work in a race. And then I think from a technical perspective, the 50 free is a lot about breath control. So if you don't really have a breathing plan, that's not good. You should get a breathing plan. So it really doesn't matter how many breaths you take. So maybe you take 2 breaths on the way down and then 2 on the way back. That's fine. Or maybe you need 3, maybe you need 0. Whatever it is, you need to have a breathing pattern so that way you're not panicking and you can control your stroke through the entire 50 meters of the race. So when it comes to the 50 free, just swim fast in practice and make sure you have a breathing pattern so that way your body's ready to handle what's about to come. We have a bunch of people waving to us. What's going on? Wave to us. Wave to us. All right, so in the meantime, while you guys are thinking about questions, and tell us where you're coming from too. I always love seeing where people are coming from in the community. Give us the name of your city, your country, and where you guys are at. So I want to get right into the topic for today, which is the burnout, the fatigue that you get as a swimmer when you get tired of swimming. You just don't like it anymore, and whether that's because you overtrained or because you've been doing it for so long and you just don't feel like going to practice anymore. It happens to everyone. So, even people that swim every single day their entire life, at some point they had a lull and they didn't really either feel like swimming or maybe, life, they got really busy with other things, that's life, and they couldn't swim. So I guess, Paige, what, does that happen to you? Has that ever happened? I guess what's...
Definitely, yeah. So I've been swimming for 20 years now, since I was a little kid. And there definitely comes a point where when you swim a lot growing up and when you swim even in your adult life, it can get kind of boring. It's true. And the biggest thing that I found that helps is swimming with friends or swimming with even new groups of people. So sometimes when I travel, I'll go find a new group that I can go swim with. Yeah. And if you get to swim and even just talking about swimming or going to a new swim meet, doing something new kind of in a new swimming community, I find really helps me kind of get re-energized of oh yeah, swimming's really fun. And you kind of get reminded of I love my swimmer friends, I love my life in swimming. I like to kind of switch up the way I work out. It's definitely good to change the way you train. If you do the same thing every day, you're gonna get really bored and you're not gonna be pushing your body as well as you could be.
So why do you think it's better to train with friends? Why is it that swimming in a group is, how come? Yeah. Because some people have never swam with a group, right? If you've only swum on your own.
No, I agree. Well, I do think it's good to swim on your own. That's kind of one mental challenge for yourself. But swimming with a group, it makes it a little bit more social. I feel like you have someone next to you that you can kind of race and push yourself, even if you're not trying to push each other, but you have that person next to you that's motivating you, or that person that's texting you, hey, we're gonna go swim at 7 a.m. You better be there.
7 a.m. I don't know where you're swimming at. 6 a.m., 5 a.m.,
so
5:30 a.m. wake up call.
Holding you accountable, that helps for sure. But I don't know. I've swum for a long time, and there are times where I'll take a couple months off. I'll take a couple weeks off. And you don't really decide it just kind of happens. Sometimes you need a break and maybe you try a new sport or you try a new form of exercise. Sometimes I'll run for a couple weeks. Sometimes I'd rather I play water polo, or I'd rather, or life gets in the way and you have other stuff going on. So
I agree. Life can get in the way. And actually what you said about mixing it up and doing other exercises, even if you're not swimming, if you're staying active in other ways, that can actually help you get back into swimming at some other point, because your body is not only active, but you have some routine of like working out built into your schedule. So, you know, if you have a regular routine of swimming 4 times a week, and then life gets crazy, but then you can still run or do yoga or even meditate or do something else that you can have alone time where you can focus on improving yourself, you know, then that can help you actually get back into swimming. And oftentimes, I want to shift the conversation a little bit. So let's say you took a huge break and you want to get back into swimming. So you used to swim like 3, 4, 5 times a week, and then you stopped swimming, or maybe you have a break in your training schedule for like 2 weeks or 4 weeks or a month. And then how do you get back into it? Do you go back into it and do as much as you can, or like do what you did when you left off?
No. So keep it, you know, start.
No, why not? Why not?
Because your body, you're getting weaker. Like every day you don't swim, your body is like, I don't know, you're not in shape as you were before. So I feel like when you get back into it, start a little slower than you were before, work your way back into getting back into shape. I think we all know that it takes a while to feel stronger and to get faster, and it can go like that if you don't keep swimming. So what I found is fun is like try a new random workout, or go to a new swim practice with other people. Do something new. Don't push yourself too hard, but do something new where you're gonna walk away from that swim practice like, oh, that was fun. I liked doing this new swim set that I've never done before.
Yeah.
I should try this again.
Well, Howard on the Facebook Live says, keep swimming interesting. And I think I agree, Howard, and one of the best ways to keep swimming interesting is to always have a goal in front of you. So that way, and maybe it's not the same goal. So maybe one year you want to do an open water competition, the next year you want to do a triathlon, maybe at some point you want to do a master's competition in the pool. And maybe even if, let's say you only do pool swimming, maybe it's doing different events. So keep it interesting by, you know, on this season I'm going to focus on backstroke, and I want to really focus on my IM, or maybe I want to improve my kick. And so when you have a specific goal that's measurable that you can focus on, it actually makes it a lot easier to stay consistent, and you're less likely to drop off. So I always recommend to people, try and have a unique goal and make sure it's a different goal than you had from the year before or season, however you're breaking it up, just to keep it fresh.
What you do, so what I personally do is when I kind of have fatigue, I'll take a break and do a different physical activity, like a different sport. What you are great at doing is like, your mantra is at least you're like, get in the water, even if you even if you don't do a full hour or 2 hour swim.
10 minutes.
You're in the pool like every day, and he'll swim for 10-15 minutes. But I guess what's your
normally it's more
than
10 minutes. I think my personal goal is I try and mix up every year. I have a different focus. So this year, next weekend actually, we're going to the Pan American Masters Championship. So we'll be in Orlando, Florida. If you're going to be there, give us a shout out. And so at that meet, I'm doing events that I don't normally compete in. So I'm doing the 50 freestyle, 100 freestyle, and 50 butterfly. You know, in the spring, I focused on my breaststroke and individual medley. So just having different events to focus on, and even out of the water. So just if you lift weights, having different parts of your body that you want to improve strength or flexibility, improve your mobility, different things like that. So I'll do that out of the water as well. And, you know, next year maybe I'll focus on doing an Olympic distance triathlon, which is different from pool swimming, obviously. I see Brian Young is saying, for me, seeing my kids starting to get involved in the sport is motivating and has inspired me to spend more time swimming. I like it, Brian. That's awesome. So I think, you know, maybe you don't want to see your kids beat up on you in training or in competition. I would definitely want to, you know, stay ahead of them. But that's an awesome way to stay engaged is, you know, if you have like, even if it's not your kids, maybe it's your siblings or your parents or your cousins or people that you grew up with. That's a great way to stay involved in the sport. What is the correct number of swimming units for a 9-year-old boy per week? All right, so I think that means like how many times per week should you swim? And that's a really difficult question because it depends on the swimmer and what their background is. There's nothing wrong with swimming every day. Swimming is not high impact, so you can do it 7 days a week. As far as the number of times you do it, so maybe you do it twice a day, that really depends on the background of the swimmer. So if you're used to swimming 7 times a week, going to 8 times a week isn't really that big of a stretch if you do 2 practices a day. If you already swim 3 times a week, then going to 8 times a week is too much. you don't want to ramp up that quickly. So maybe if you want to eventually get up to 8 times per week, and this is regardless of age isn't really that relevant, you should not go up more than 10 to 20% per week, which means if you do 5 workouts one week, the most you can do is 6 workouts the next week. And then the following week, maybe 7 workouts. So it takes you a few weeks or months to even get to a point where you can swim that much. I see some hellos on the Facebook. I see Brian Young, you had some more comments. Thanks for giving us the comments.
Yeah.
He says, I think both being stuck swimming alone and not being involved in a program or having direction to improve contributes to burnout. Yeah, I agree. If you're swimming alone and you don't have a plan, you can burn yourself out. Luckily, there are great applications like AskASwimPro where you can get a plan and stick with that program, and that'll make you a lot more consistent and a lot less likely to burn out.
Yep, and it's more fun. It definitely is. We also have Emma here. She said, thank you so much. That's helpful because I'm trying to get back in shape for college swimming. So that's a great point too.
Emma, what's up, Emma?
Some people, their swimming is very seasonal. So maybe you take a couple months off, or you compete for a big meet, and then what do you do after a big meet?
This is a really good question.
Pandas,
okay.
What do you do?
So after a big competition, a lot of people do this wrong, in my opinion, and what a lot of people think. So oftentimes people will train up until a big competition and then stop swimming for like 1 or 2 weeks and then pick back up into it. So actually, and that's not the best for you physiologically. The best time to take a break is actually a few weeks after a big competition. And so what happens is if you taper for a championship meet, let's say you spend 3 weeks tapering and you let off of your aerobic conditioning, and then you do a competition for a week, and then you take a break for 2 weeks, then when you get back into it, you will have taken 5 weeks off of aerobic conditioning, and that's how you get really out of shape. The best way is to train for your competition, taper, and immediately after the competition, you do aerobic training. Not like high intensity, but you do mixed aerobic training. So you're doing a lot of like easier IM, long distance freestyle, just to get your aerobic capacity back up. And then you take a break for a week or two. And then at the end of that 5-week period or 2-month period, your body's gonna be in a way better off position. And then you can pick back up into training after your break as if you didn't even take a break. But if you take a break immediately after tapering, then that's as if you went 5-6 weeks without doing any aerobic activity. And that's why you feel terrible when you get back into the water and you lost your feel of the water. So that's one of those hidden tips that a lot of people don't know is you actually don't want to take a break immediately after a championship. You want to take a break 2 weeks after your championship, 2 weeks of like mixed aerobic activity.
Yeah. And I think as an adult swimmer, it's fun to, what I found is fun is switching up different swim events. So try an open water race for the first time, try a triathlon, try a different event, try a sprint, try a long distance. The more you kind of switch it up, you'll be able to set a new goal and work towards that goal, which makes your training a lot easier.
And Howard has a comment saying it also means that we need to design sets and practices that have specific goals and challenges. It doesn't have to be best times, or it can be stroke rate, breath control. Totally agree. Anything you can do to keep it from getting boring and lead to burnout, you have to find balance. Totally agree. Howard, sounds like you're a great coach. I agree. You don't always have to chase a best 100 time. You can focus on things like underwater breath control. You can work on your distance per stroke. That's always something you can improve. Like, how can you improve your SWALT score? Your SWALT score is a measure of how efficient you are, so there's different ways that you can manipulate that with different sets. So it's not about how fast you go. One season, if you're a master swimmer especially, you can focus a whole season on improving your SWALT score and improving your efficiency, taking down the number of strokes you take per length, just trying to lower that. And then over time, you can improve your swimming and not get burned out just because you're able to mix it up in what you were focusing on. So totally agree with Howard. We have a question from Ethan. Is that Ethan?
Yeah.
Ethan.
On Facebook Live, how to train for the 200 freestyle.
Oh, the 200 freestyle is such a hard event. So 200 freestyle is a hard event if you swim it correctly, because people think of it as mid-distance, but it's really not, because most people are under 2 minutes, or if you're 2 minutes or under, that's really an anaerobic race, so it's more like a sprint. So if you want to be good at the 200, you have to train at speed all the time. So really good sets to train for the 200 are like 650s, at the minute race pace. You want like a 1-to-1 work-rest ratio. So if you can average 30 seconds, you do the interval on the minute. So you do like 650s freestyle on the minute, and your goal is to hit your 200 pace. And actually, you should be able to hit just a little bit faster than your 200 pace. And if you can hold that for 650s continuously, you'll be able to do it for a 200, because a 200 is only 450s. But you have to do 450s repetitive, one after another, whereas the 650s, you get a break, for 30 seconds between each one. So I think for the 200 free, you have to focus on hitting race pace all the time. It's not enough to just train aerobically and be in really good shape. If you do a lot of distance swimming, you're not going to be able to execute the 200 the way your body is capable of. And if you only do sprint training, you're not going to have enough endurance on the third and fourth 50 to keep your speed up all the way. So race-based training is really the only way you can be good at the 200. And that applies for everything other than freestyle. So like breaststroke and backstroke and fly and the 200 IM, you have to train it at race pace. Otherwise, you're not going to be very fast in the 200.
Here's a question on like fatigue, I guess, in your training. So if you're swimming 3 to 4 times a week and you're kind of at a point where you still want to kind of swim, but you want to take a little break, you're a little burnt out, maybe you're really busy with a lot going on this summer, what would you recommend, taking your swimming down a level, but still staying in kind of shape?
Yeah, so I would say if you're swimming 3-4 times a week, it's cool to drop down to 2 times per week, but 2 times per week is sort of the minimum to keep a really good feel for the water. So if you can drop lower than 2 times per week to once per week or even not at all, but then you lose your feel of the water. So whenever you come back to it, it's going to take you a lot longer. So 2 times per week is sort of the bare minimum to maintain feel of the water and also not lose that much aerobic capacity. Now here's the thing, you don't actually have to swim that much. So if you swim 2 times a week, only 1,000 meters, that's actually enough.
Yeah.
You don't actually have to swim very much. Frequency is more important than the distance that you swim. And so it's actually better for you to do 1,000 meter workout twice a week than to do one 2,000 meter workout only once per week, assuming you're doing the right stuff in the 1,000 meters. So you do like a full workout. So you warm up a little bit, you do a little bit of kicking, a little bit of drilling, maybe 450s of each of the strokes, and then 100 cool down. So that's a 1,000 meter workout that activates all of your muscles, and most importantly, it gets your feel of the water super engaged. And that's a lot better than doing one 2,000 meter workout only once per week. So
yeah. And then maybe like your third day, incorporate running or yoga.
Yeah, do other activity for sure.
Or cycling.
Yeah. So the 2 times per week is like, that's swimming, but if you're gonna do other activity, that's really good. It'll make it easier to get back into a big full swimming routine if you're always activating your body via other activity and like lifting, meditation, yoga, any dry land training or anything.
We have a question from Mark on Instagram. What's up, Mark? All right, he's asking how many times should I breathe for a 50? I'm guessing a 50 freestyle.
Nice. So if you're really good in the 50 freestyle, you won't take any breaths. If you're pretty good, you'll do it in 1 breath. If you're solid, you'll do it in 2 breaths. If you're still learning how to race the 50, it might be 3 or 4, and you can see the pattern. So you don't have to do it in 0 breaths, but the closer you can get to a number that's like 1 or 2, the better. Now, the more important question is not how many breaths you take, it's when do you take the breaths. So let's say you're gonna take 2 breaths in the 50 free. It makes sense to split the 2 breaths. If it's a 50 in a short course pool, you do a breath on the first 25 and a breath on the second 25. And on the second 25, your breath should be closer to halfway than immediately off the wall. So when you dive in for a 50 in a short course pool, if you're gonna take 2 breaths, you'll take your first breath between the 15 meter mark and the flags, and then on the way back, you'll take the second breath at about halfway. And that'll be really difficult. That's the part you have to train for and get practice, because it's really tempting to take that second breath earlier on the second 25. So like you'll flip turn and then you'll want to take a breath immediately. And so you have to train yourself to do a strong breakout and do 6 strokes, for example, and then take the breath at about halfway on the way back. If you only take 1 breath in the 50 and it's a short course or even a long course, you do it past 25 meters. So you might do it around 35 meters in a short course setup. So you'll do it 10 meters off the wall. And if it's long course, it would probably be the same thing, if not even further out. So maybe 38 meters out. So even closer to the finish, because in long course, your body gets tired a lot faster. because you don't have the break up the wall. And if you take 3 breaths, most of the time you'll take 1 on the way down, 2 on the way back. And if it's 4, you'll probably do 2 and 2. If it's 5, you'll probably go 2 down, 3 on the way back. It really depends, but most importantly, just train and then stick with your race plan. Don't panic when you get to the actual race.
That's awesome.
You guys have any more questions? Come on, this is the AskASwimPro show.
We got one more on Instagram. So how do we train for the 500-yard freestyle?
Ooh, we have a yard swimmer. So you're coming from the United States. Hello, we're in Detroit. We're in the United States as well.
We're in the middle, downtown Detroit, Michigan.
Yeah, so the 500 free, couple of schools of thought. One is the negative split methodology. So you really try and like build the entire 500 so that way your time is actually a negative split. So if your goal is to go under 6 minutes, for example, the first 250 would be 3 minutes and the second 250 would be 2:59. So you can swim the 500 like that where you build the entire thing. Another way to think about it is by 100s. So you think about it as 5 100s. The first 100 is you set up your rhythm, and then each of the next 100s are kind of a descent, but you're holding a strong pace, and then the last 100 is fast. And then the third school of thought that I've seen for the 500 is where you break it up is like 100, a 200, a 200. So the first 100 is just a build. You set up your race pace, and then the next 200 you just hold your race pace, and then you try and crank it up on the last 200. Those are 3 of the most common ways to break up 500, and it's pretty similar if you do a 400 in short course meters or long course meters. Oftentimes you look at it as like 2 200s and then you negative split. You go 200 hard, 200 faster, or you go 4 100s, same methodology. I don't recommend you break it up into like 850s or 1050s because that's just too much to think about. It's a lot better to think of it as like a 500 negative split or 5 100s, or even the 100 200 200 or 200 100 200. So that's my advice on the 200. So good luck and hope you swim fast. Ooh, we got a question from Aza. How can I increase energy in my body? What do you think?
Swim.
Yeah, energy. So maybe like you're fatigued? I don't know. Maybe dehydrated.
Yeah.
Nutrients.
Maybe he thinks we're talking about fatigue as in you're tired.
Yeah, so you might be fatigued from training, and you need to make sure you're refueling yourself.
Yep. That's
a big mistake a lot of people make is they don't fuel within 30 minutes after their workout. You need to have protein, carbs, and hydration. So water is good. Try and avoid a lot of sugary, like a Pepsi, Coke. I don't want to give bad advertising to them, but anything that's really sugary you want to try and avoid. You want electrolytes. So if it's an energy drink, it should be like a Gatorade or Powerade or something that has energy. And make sure you're hydrating. Yeah,
definitely your diet, hydrating with water, your sleep patterns. So if you're not sleeping well, you probably aren't going to swim as well. And I also think that I feel more energized when I'm lifting, when I'm a little stronger. I feel like if I lift on a Monday, if I have a really hard lift on a Monday, by Wednesday I'm feeling really good in the water. Maybe Monday afternoon or Tuesday, the day or the day after my lift, I'll feel a little slower and tired in the water. But after 2 days, I feel so much better in the water. I also run. I feel like running helps me in the water more. A lot of it's just my, your breathing. It helps a lot more.
All right, so we had a bunch of questions. I'm going to fire them off really quick. So I saw on Instagram we had a question about the 100 freestyle. 100 freestyle, long course especially, you should really try and negative split it. If you watch the best swimmers in the world, they actually don't go that fast the first 50. Some of them do, but a lot of them are really focused on maximizing their distance per stroke and speed on the second 50 because that's where people fall off and then they go way slower at the end. So you want to make sure you're really consistent. 100 freestyle, you should only have like a 1.5 to 2 second spread in time, and most of that is because you dove in and the time is to your feet. So you should not have more than 2 seconds in the 100 freestyle.